Well, I think we'll just have to start anyway. Is that good, Christina, like that? Everybody can hear me better now? I can hear me better now, too. It's good. I'd like us to start this second part of our morning session by reciting together the 37 Bodhisattva practices. I'm going to say a couple of words first about it. This is a 14th century text that is beloved throughout the world by Dharma students and practitioners. It's said to be the entire Dharma, nothing missing. And Garchen Rinpoche, when he first gave it to us, said, anything that's here is Dharma, and anything that's not here is not Dharma. Meaning in this little booklet, in this text. It was written by a monk named Tokme Zangpo, who, if you've read the text at all, you have seen that he expresses with humility and also confidence that he is not a great scholar or practitioner, but nonetheless he's relied upon the sutras and the teachings of the sublime ones. And so he has confidence that the 37 bodhisattva practices that he composed are not mistaken. So you've probably heard the expression, Buddha in the palm of your hand. Have you heard that expression? Well, it actually means what we've been talking about this morning, but it also means it almost fits in the palm of our hands, the whole thing, right here, right now. And I have in mind at some point maybe there will be a tattoo that can be placed, right at the heart, that has the whole text in it, or maybe on what Milarepa called the heart bone, the bone of the heart. This is our guide to the Bodhisattva path. It's called by one of the great teachers of this last century, Dilgo Chensa Rinpoche, said the most complete guide to enlightenment that exists. So we're very fortunate to hold this in the palms of our hands. So I'd like us to recite it together, and then I'll speak a little bit about what came up at the very end with Carl. Is that your name? Carl's last question, or probably not his last question, the last one we've heard. So, let me just say at the beginning, Lokeshvaraya, that we're saying Namo Lokeshvaraya, is another name for Avalokiteshvara, who's the deity of compassion. So when we're greeting Namo Lokeshvaraya at the very beginning of this text, we're saying homage to compassion. Namo Lokeshvaraya. While seeing that all phenomena neither come nor go, you strive solely for the sake of all beings. Supreme Guru and Protector Chenrezig, at all times I respectfully pay homage to you with my body, speech, and mind. The perfect Buddhas, source of all well-being and ultimate peace, arise from having accomplished the true Dharma. And since that depends on knowing the practices, I shall explain the way of the Bodhisattvas. Having now gained this great ship of freedom and fortune, so difficult to find, in order to free yourself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence, listen, reflect, and meditate day and night without distraction. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Attachment to loved ones churns like water. Hatred for enemies rages like fire. In the darkness of ignorance, one forgets what to adopt and what to avoid. Abandon your homeland. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When negative places are abandoned, disturbing emotions will gradually decline. Without distractions, attention to virtue naturally grows. When the mind becomes clear, certainty in the Dharma arises. Live alone in seclusion. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Family and longtime companions will part from each other. Possessions gained with effort will be left behind. Consciousness, a guest, will leave the guest house of the body. Let go of all worldly concerns. This is the way of a bodhisattva. In bad company, the three poisons grow stronger. The activities of learning, reflecting, and meditation decline, and love and compassion are lost. Give up such companions. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When one follows a true spiritual friend, faults will dissolve and good qualities will grow like a waxing moon. Consider this friend more dear than your own body. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Who can worldly gods, themselves imprisoned in samsara, protect? Therefore seek refuge in the three jewels, the undeceiving source of refuge. This is the way of a bodhisattva. The Buddha taught that all the unbearable suffering of the lower realms is caused by wrongdoing. Therefore, never do wrong, even at the cost of your life. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Like a dewdrop on a blade of grass, the happiness of the three worlds vanishes in but an instant. Strive for the supreme state of never-changing liberation. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When mothers who've loved you since beginningless time are suffering, what good is your own happiness? Therefore, give rise to bodhichitta in order to liberate infinite sentient beings. This is the way of a bodhisattva. All suffering without exception comes from seeking your own happiness. The perfect Buddhas are born from the altruistic mind. Therefore, truly exchange your own happiness for the suffering of others. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if someone driven by great desire steals all your wealth or lets others steal it, dedicate to them your body, possessions, and all virtue of the three times. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if someone cuts off your head when you haven't done anything wrong, take all their negative deeds upon yourself through the power of compassion. This is the way of a bodhisattva. If others slander you throughout a billion worlds, in return speak with a loving mind of their good qualities. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if someone exposes your hidden faults and insults you in front of others, view that person as a teacher and bow with respect. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if someone you've cared for as dearly as your own child regards you as an enemy, love that person even more as a mother would her ailing child. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if someone of equal or lower status, driven by pride, treats you with disdain, respectfully place them on your crown as your teacher. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Though you may be impoverished, always gripped by disease and tormented by spirits, never lose courage, but take on the pain and misdeeds of all beings. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Though you may be famous and admired by many who bow to you and as rich as the wealth god himself, having seen that worldly fortune is without essence, do not be proud. This is the way of a bodhisattva. If the enemy, your own anger, is not tamed, subduing outer enemies will only make them increase. Therefore, subdue your own mind with the army of love and compassion. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Sensory pleasures are like salt water. The more you drink, the greater your thirst. Abandon at once all things that bring forth clinging attachment. This is the way of a bodhisattva. The way things appear is your own mind. Mind itself primordially transcends fabricated extremes. Knowing just this, do not create concepts of subject and object. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When you come across things that attract you, like beautiful rainbows in summertime, do not regard them as real and abandon clinging attachment. This is the way of a bodhisattva. All suffering is like the death of your child in a dream. How exhausting it is to hold illusory appearances as real. Therefore, when you meet with difficult circumstances, see them as illusory. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When even one's body must be given up when aspiring for enlightenment, what need is there to mention material things? Therefore, practice generosity without hope of reward or karmic results. This is the way of a bodhisattva. If you lack moral discipline, you cannot accomplish even your own purpose, so wanting to achieve the purpose of others is truly absurd. Therefore, protect your discipline without concern for worldly existence. This is the way of a bodhisattva. For bodhisattvas who desire a wealth of virtue, all harm is like a precious treasure. Therefore, without hostility, be patient with everyone. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even hearers or solitary realizers who accomplish only their own purpose strive as if putting out a fire on their head. Seeing this, practice with diligence the source of good qualities for the sake of all beings. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Disturbing emotions are destroyed by insight grounded in calm abiding. Knowing this, cultivate meditative concentration that perfectly transcends the four formless absorptions. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Without wisdom, the other five perfections alone are not enough to reach complete enlightenment. Thus, combined with skillful means, develop the wisdom that does not distinguish among the three spheres. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Unless you examine your own confused ideas, you might look like a practitioner, but not be acting like one. Therefore, always examine yourself and abandon confusion. This is the way of a bodhisattva.
If you are driven by disturbing emotions
and ask about another bodhisattva's faults, it is actually to your own detriment. So don't mention the faults of those who've entered the great vehicle. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Concern for gain and respect causes conflict and a decline in the activities of learning and reflecting and meditating. So abandon attachment to your circle of friends, relations, and benefactors. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Harsh words disturb others' minds and thus diminish the practice of a bodhisattva. Therefore, abandon harsh speech, which is unpleasant to others. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When disturbing emotions become habitual, it is difficult to reverse them with antidotes. Thus, the soldier of mindfulness wields antidotes as weapons and destroys disturbing emotions such as attachment the moment they start to arise. This is the way of a bodhisattva. In brief, wherever you are and whatever you are doing, always examine the state of your mind. Act to accomplish the purpose of others through constant mindfulness and awareness. This is the way of a bodhisattva. With the wisdom of threefold purity, dedicate all the virtue gained from having made such effort toward enlightenment, dedicated to clear away the suffering of infinite beings. This is the way of a bodhisattva. In accordance with the words of the holy ones regarding the meaning of the sutras, tantras, and their commentaries, I've written these 37 verses on the ways of a bodhisattva for those who wish to train on the bodhisattva's path. This composition will not be admired by the learned because my intellect is poor and my education is limited. However, I have followed the sutras and the words of holy ones, so I believe these ways of a bodhisattva are not mistaken. Still, because the vast deeds of bodhisattvas are difficult to grasp by simple-minded beings like myself, I beg the forgiveness of the holy ones for the mass of my errors, such as contradictions and inconsistencies. By the virtue arising from this, may all beings give rise to relative and ultimate bodhicitta, and therefore become the protector, like the protector Chenrezig, who does not abide in the extremes of existence or peace. The monk Tokme, a proponent of scripture and reasoning, composed these verses in the precious cave at Ngulchu for his own and others' benefits. I apologize for my verbal stumbles. This is the training manual for beings in existence who wish to liberate all beings from suffering and confusion, its cause, and who strive without attachment to personal accomplishment, but with commitment to accomplishment for the benefit of all. strive to recognize the causes and operations of those causes in our ordinary consciousness, and strive to abandon those causes, and strive to ever increase compassion and love for other beings, and actually for all things and phenomena as well, and who by this striving clear away what obscures the natural seeing of the natural mind. So this is the handbook or the training manual for those who recognize the two truths and their union, which is what I want to talk about next. And I want to go to page 1 of the Bodhisattva Practices to repeat one verse, the introductory verse, that says, while seeing that all phenomena neither come nor go, you, meaning the deity of compassion, the full accomplishment of compassion and love, you strive solely for the sake of all beings. Supreme Guru and Protector Chenrezig, which is another name for Avalokiteshvara, at all times I respectfully pay homage to you with my body, speech, and mind. To pay homage to compassion and love is to take up the practice of compassion and love. To pay homage by one's physical gesture of bowing or making other gestures of homage is good, but the truest homage is the homage of the mind that takes compassion, love for its nature and strives ceaselessly to sweep away what obscures that from its full revelation and its full expression in the realms of existence. So the Bodhisattva, here we are sitting here, we're just the most ordinary and sublime of creatures sitting here in this room together. But ordinary, meaning we're living in the worlds of convention, and we're very much influenced and conditioned by the world of convention and materiality, and by our experience of senses, and how compelling and convincing that experience, that sensory experience is about the nature of reality and what's good to strive for and so on. But as I spoke to briefly earlier, while this existence is not illusory, we are in the state of illusion about what it actually consists of, both at the level of our own mind's operations that constitute causes of suffering for this and future times, and about its absolute nature. So I want to speak a little bit about that. The Bodhisattva here is described, the deity of compassion, the accomplisher of ultimate bodhicitta, bodhisattva motivation and accomplishment, sees that all phenomena neither come nor go, and yet strives for the sake of those beings who do not see that. That's our key to understanding the union of the two truths, and how the Bodhisattva, ourselves included, is that union. That we now, if not before, are hearing the information that in the realms of consciousness, all phenomena definitely come and go. In the realms of material reality, all phenomena come and go. There is nothing that has inherent existence that is not unchanging. There's nothing that is uncaused. Everything arises from cause dependent upon the circumstances, the conditions that allow it to arise, and abides only as long as those conducive circumstances continue. When they cease, that phenomenon ceases to exist. Did everybody get that? This is what's called interdependence. All phenomena have a cause, and that cause is the reason for that arising, that display, that appearance, that phenomenon, that event, that relationship, that emotion, that thought, that mind state. And the cause will give rise to the appearance, meaning the display or the phenomena. Yes? With me? And that display or phenomenon will exist as long as the conditions exist that allow it to come into existence and abide for a moment or a millennium. And when those conditions, when the cause is exhausted by the appearance, let me say a few words about that, or a word. It's taught that this is a rudimentary, really fundamental teaching about karmic causation. Karma just means cause and effect. And it's taught that when result appears, necessity ceases. That would be the same thing as saying when the oak tree appears, the acorn is no longer required. Okay? The karmic cause, which is in the mind stream, gives rise to an appearance, a phenomenon, a person, a state of mind, or whatever, a weather pattern, whatever the phenomenon may be. And depending on the conditions that obtain, that cause, the result of that cause will abide, in other words, exist, appear, operate, whatever verb we want to use, for as long as the conditions are conducive. When the cause of the phenomenon, let's say the sentient being, when the cause of my existence here, or when the cause of our coming together today, when the cause of that comes to fruition in our actually being together today, we can say that the cause, moment by moment, has expired. It's been purified. It's been liberated because the result appears. We have set more than one cause of this kind in this lifetime and other lifetimes for us to gather as spiritual friends in a beautiful place and hear words of Dharma. So appearances can continue as long as the conditions support them, but once the cause has been accomplished in the result, it is purified. It exists no more. But over and over again, we set the same causes. Like, I have a tendency to be intemperate, let's put it that way. And I find that is a tendency because I note that it happens over and over again. Each time it happens, the cause of that particular episode of intemperance, I'm not talking about drinking, I'm talking about temper. Right? Yeah. So each time I have a little temper fit, or a fit of pique, that cause is exhausted in that moment. It'll last as long as the conditions make it possible, and then it'll subside, which we observe in our mind states. Yes, they arise, they abide for a moment, then they're gone. Whatever it is we do about them. Because each moment of that mind state is the purification or the completion of an individual cause being set in the mind stream. So over and over again, if you find yourself having a certain kind of temperament or reaction, or speaking certain kinds of words and so on, over and over again, that seed has been laid on the ground. And then it's like the analogy that I love, because I live here in the Southwest, is the wildflower seed on the dry desert floor. It could be on that desert floor for centuries, just invisible. You wouldn't even notice it if you picked it up. Probably, by then it's so dried out. You know what we say in Arizona? One drop for a crop. Right? So along comes a drop of rain, lands on that seed, poof, wildflower. That's what it's like for us. It's really a very, very close analogy. Sometimes I get a little afield from where I started, so I'm going to wind my way back, if I can, here. I really don't know how I got there, but I'll go back to where I think I was. The phenomenal reality, whatever it looks like, whether it's something that's in your mind or whether it's a phenomenon on the globe, will operate the same way. It will operate the way I've just described. There will be a cause. There will be a flowering of that cause. There will be an abiding. There will be a ceasing. It's true of any physical event or object. It's true of anything that arises in our mind or in our emotions. It's true of everything in our bodies. Garten Rinpoche has explained to me at one point when I was asking him questions about karma that the relationship between individual and collective karma, which is a question that often comes up, and that our individual karma is from causes in our own mind stream, and collective karma is the collective appearance of causes in the mind stream of many, or maybe two. In the case of a family, it might be two people, but that the physical surroundings and the phenomena that are occurring globally, the weather patterns and so on, that all of these are karmically caused as well, and the appearances that we're all sharing, like we're here in this temple in this incredibly lovely, beautiful desert landscape, we have all the causes, we've all created the causes that allow this to appear and ourselves to inhabit it for a while. Someday those causes will be fully extinguished, and this temple then will no longer exist. You know, the landscape may have palm trees in it instead. You know, everything is changing. The responsibility of karma is really individual. Even for group manifestations of karma, the individual is the only one who can change that individual's mind, and the only one who can chase down cause and purify it intentionally. The group, whether it's, again, 2 or millions, does have the potential of taking collective responsibility for collective manifestations. We see often, though, how those who are struggling against collective manifestations forget the love motive. And I don't want to go too far here because I'll come to it later. It's a favorite topic that Laura and I have been exploring for decades. When we when we're in the midst of collective phenomena, again, whether it's a family or a community or a nation or a world, that we think are really positive, we want to cling to that. We want that to continue. When we're in the presence or in a moment of time when many things are occurring that we think are negative, we want to push that away. We want to repudiate that. We want to reject it. Again, that's the same thing I was speaking about earlier when I talked about the personalizing of the causes of one's own suffering and the experience of one's own suffering. Recognizing that there is karmic causation at work points us to our own responsibility and to acknowledging that the responsibility of each other being is really out of our hands, and that change is going to occur in every phenomenon that we observe or experience. Change is going to occur. What we want is going to come apart and fall away. What we don't want is going to stick with us, and vice versa. So there's a wonderful teaching I heard at one point about a lama, a monk who was saying to a friend, he had a friend who wanted to kill someone, and he said, "Oh, don't bother." Why did he say that? He's going to die anyway. You might have to wait, 50 years, but don't bother. You'll just get in trouble. Let it be. Right? So that's a deep understanding in the moment of material phenomenon of the operations of karma. We think, oh, it's change. Yes, but change is caused. It's going to happen anyway because of the nature of karmic phenomena and causation and its effects. But to not personalize this is to open the door to taking the highest ethics possible, which is the ethics of really understanding interdependence and responsibility. So now to come back to where I thought I was starting. Think what it takes to work tirelessly to relieve the suffering of a single individual who is precious to you. When you know that you can't control that outcome, and that the phenomenon of that dear one's suffering is has a karmic cause in that person's continuum, not of this lifetime, usually very serious karmic creations, like extreme disease, for example. Rinpoche has explained, have their roots of karma in back many, many lifetimes. So it's not of much value to try to think, well, what did I do to deserve this screaming headache or whatever? It's not like that. But it does mean that somewhere there was causation, or there would not be effect. But so here you are with this cherished being, not necessarily a human, but a cherished being. And the being is experiencing great suffering, and you're very aware of it. It's really right in your field. This suffering is right in your field. It's having an impact on you, both emotionally and physically and mentally. And you can do everything to alleviate it, but you can't stop it. And yet you strive in every way you can think of to remove any stimulus for that suffering or any circumstance that appears to exacerbate it. As if this were your most beloved child, you strive to the utmost, to your limit and beyond it, to rescue that dear one from his or her anguish. That's a little taste of what it means to recognize that all phenomena neither come nor go in the ultimate, but that in the relative existence, all phenomena are always coming and going, and to strive ceaselessly and unconditionally to alleviate and remove and liberate from suffering those whom you can. To take a quick segue, don't think that your strivings are limited to what you can see or do or think. might be dependent upon your activities, the mind is the powerful place of practice at that level. The mind. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about motivation, particularly tomorrow, but we're touching here. So that's an appearance arising. The suffering of this dear being is an appearance arising that you want to change because it's negative. You experience it as negative for the sufferer and for yourself because your compassion is stirred and you're feeling that pain as if it were your own, which is what a bodhisattva does. And to a real bodhisattva, the suffering of beings will naturally come. You don't have to go looking for people to save or suffering to relieve. It will come to you. And you will have the means in your hand in your metaphorical hands to work with it skillfully. The key here in this introductory verse is that the bodhisattva practices to see through the appearances to the actual nature of reality and to engage the world of appearances in full comprehension, to whatever degree we're capable at a given moment, in full comprehension that selfness has no inherent existence, that causes produce their results, their effects, conditions are always changing, all appearances are always coming and going, and that all of this that we're living so vividly is transient by its nature, ephemeral by its nature, insubstantial by its nature, and yet we are, as bodhisattvas, we are committed to engaging this realm with everything we've got. And that's what I meant when I said, take the whole thing. With everything we can, with everything we have, with everything we know, with everything we feel, with all of our ignorance, all of our self-interest and self-grasping, all of our helpless suffering in behalf of those who are helplessly suffering, we bring that all. We bring it. We just bring it. We hold nothing back, even while recognizing it's all coming and going, and it has no inherent existence. It is a phenomenal display. That is the way it is for us now, although we may not see it. All of us can recognize ourselves in the description I just gave of somebody striving wholeheartedly and without any restraint to help somebody else, help another being. We've all been in that situation to some degree or another. So you can recognize yourself in what I've just said, that the appearance is an appearance, and we fully engage it. As our existence is an appearance, and we fully engage it. We fully engage this life, as I was saying earlier this morning, we fully engage this life as the bodhisattva opportunity. The motivation of the bodhisattva is described as relative and ultimate, and that motivation is called bodhichitta, which means mind of enlightenment or enlightenment mind. It's the jewel of the Dharma. It's the jewel of the universal Dharma. I don't mean just the Buddha Dharma. It's the mind of unconditional love and compassion for all. And the intention arising in one's own mind to attain full Buddhahood, full enlightenment ourselves, full liberation from the causes of suffering ourselves in order to be able to liberate others. So bodhicitta is called relative and ultimate also. Relative bodhicitta is what we experience in our lives as love and compassion. or even a mild caring, or passionate devotion to the cause of saving beings or saving the world. This is relative compassion. Ultimate bodhicitta recognizes the emptiness of the phenomena and is without condition or limit. Relative bodhicitta is still conditional. It depends on our mood from one day to another, for example, how robust our love and compassion are. It depends even on the weather, whether you're going to go out into the soup kitchen and stand there and serve people or not, whether it's snowing and you're going to crash, you're afraid you might crash your cars, so you stay home. So it's relative in these small ways, but it's relative also because it truly is changing dependent upon the circumstances and the beings who are involved, as well as on our state of mind. Excuse me, I need this drink. Ultimate bodhicitta, no change, no condition, no limitation, no coming or going. And the note upon which we began today is the note I want to sound again now. The experience of relative bodhicitta, which we could call relative love and compassion, reflects ultimate bodhicitta, which is actually our true nature. We can say our true nature is emptiness and luminosity or love. The natural expression of that emptiness is love and compassion. So our puny or robust compassion in a given moment, highly conditional, really, very ephemeral, very dependent on whether we like the guy or not, that sort of thing. So our relative compassion is inextricably, inseparably one with the ultimate bodhicitta that is the jewel of our own nature. Inalienable, inseparable. So again, there's no spiritual Walmart in your future. You don't have to go out looking for these qualities. You look within for them. You look within for them. And when you look without, you're looking to see the reflections of these sublime qualities everywhere you look. The phenomenal world is like a mirror, showing us our own mind in every instant. Now, it shows us our own mind in ways that we really don't like a lot of the time. But what we don't realize is that it's also showing us our own mind when we see an example of extraordinary compassion in the world, or when someone treats us with tremendous respect and love. These are also mirrors for our mind. These are our qualities too. So I think there are two implications of this that are really important for us. One is that we are by our nature empowered on the path. By our nature empowered on the path. Nobody has to, give us this small jewel that resides in our continuum. It's there already, and it's shedding its light within all the time. And it's also shedding its light on the path. The second implication is no more excuses. You can't say, honestly, I can't possibly, love everybody. I can't possibly care about the suffering of all beings. You can't really honestly say it, because in your nature, that whole and holy love and compassion are there. They're yours. They're you. So you can't honestly say that you don't have that potential. What you can say is, I observe my mind and I find that I'm incredibly lazy. Or I observe my mind and see that I make a good start and then I kind of flake out. Or you can observe your mind and say, I dislike this person so much that I'm not going to open the door to loving and being compassionate even in my mind towards this being whom I detest. In other words, you'll observe your mind and see that you're choosing not the path that strives ceaselessly, but the path that strives conditionally. So these are teachings that relate to what's called the two truths, ultimate and relative. The Bodhisattva is practicing on the cusp, right? And we are living on that cusp. We are the union of the two truths, relative and ultimate. So when I say the Bodhisattva is, we are. And not just because we're bodhisattvas, but because we're beings in existence, and we are in existence and of the nature of being. That's another way of saying we're in existence and we're of the nature of, or we're in the relative and we're of the nature of the absolute or the ultimate. No separation. No separation. There's a traditional teaching about the bodhisattva motivation that I love. It says that it's taught that there are three kinds of bodhisattva motivations, or three kinds of bodhisattvas. And one is the emperor or the king or the queen, who basically says, I must save all beings. I must attain enlightenment in order to save all beings, and I must do that first because otherwise I won't be able to do that, to save all beings. That's the motivation of the king or the queen or the emperor or empress. And the second description is the motivation of the ship captain with a ship of many beings on the ship, and the captain says, I must bring this good ship safely to harbor so that altogether we can attain enlightenment, we can achieve Buddhahood altogether. So I must captain my vessel very well. And the third motivation is described as the motivation of the shepherd, who says simply, let all the flock go first. Let all my flock go first. The three Pam Powers is announcing that she is very much relating to the world at times. Don't apologize. We all have done this countless times, and probably somebody's about to do it again. So I don't think I turned my phone off, in fact, so you may hear something. So these three may seem as if, when you hear them, may seem as if you identify with one of them. You can recognize in your own mind stream, your own way of being in the world, you can recognize that you're more akin to one or the other of these three kinds of motivations. You don't need to see them as hierarchical. You don't need to see one as better than the other. They express different ways of being a bodhisattva in the world. And you might think, as a ship captain, hearing about the shepherd, you might think, obviously, that's a higher quality of mind than mine, you know. But the shepherd would be completely at a loss if given a ship full of beings. So don't compare. Just magnify, continue to develop and increase and nurture your own bodhicitta so that you are inhabiting this world with a mind that is not in any way limited by it, because you recognize you're walking the cusp. You are the union of the relative and the absolute. The absolute has expression in the world through you. Absolute love and compassion express in the world through your limited, halting, unreliable, now you see it, now you don't, compassion and love for beings. No separation. And we're all in this together. So let's just sit. We have 5 minutes before we're going to break for lunch. So let's just quietly allow whatever has been said here this morning that is of meaning to you, allow it just to trickle into your mind stream and into your understanding. In attending teachings or studying the Dharma, my experience is that our confidence, our understanding and our confidence and our ability grow when we are able to take the essence of what we've received and bring that in to our mind and our practice and our way of being in the world to the best of our ability. And this was an instruction to me from Garchen Rinpoche, a personal private instruction. He said, it ceases to be private at this moment. I've mentioned it before, but this is live streaming, so now it goes out a little further. He said, whatever teaching or practice you receive, distill the essence and practice on that. So whatever has come to you this morning in words or in the presence of being here that has meaning and resonance for you, take it in and allow it to grow and guide you in your living and your practice. Okay, so let's just be still for a couple of minutes and then we'll go and eat good food. Thank you so much. You might want to take a look in the packet of study materials that you've received. The first two pieces there are supports for our understanding of what we've been talking about this morning. So, and I'll just remind you of this basket in which you can place your questions. Okay? Try to write legibly. Thank you, thank you. Silence doesn't begin until tomorrow. So you don't need to not talk, but if you want to be silent, sometimes we can create a table in the dining room for people who don't want to speak just yet. You feel free to do that if you want to. And I won't be joining you for meals until this evening. First day, just want to hold it steady so I don't get too talky. Normally we end our sessions dedicating the merit of our being together, but we're in retreat. So we just continue to practice. No end to the session.